Hello and welcome to our Accounting 360 group project with Danielle LeBlanc, Emily Fleming, Rafael Uzu, and Priscilla Sanchez. We will be going over the master budget of Arizona Department of Education. For this project, we were able to get an inside resource, Khatib Mahmood Hussain. He is an IT financial analyst at the Arizona Department of Education. Being an IT financial analyst, he works directly with the master budget. He was incredibly helpful in forming our project, and he gave us an employee perspective on how the master budget works at ADE. Before looking at the Arizona Department of Education's master budget, I wanted to go over their mission statement: to serve Arizona's education community, ensuring every child has access to an excellent education. This mission statement really explains the function and the goals of ADE, which is going to affect how their master budget is formed. Their budget is not about a bottom line, but more about the needs of the communities. The master budget for ADE. Just a quick overview of what a master budget is. It is a budget that summarizes and integrates all the individual budgets within an organization. The master budget at ADE is program-based. This means that the major divisions in the organizations are based off of function and not process. Some of the programs that derive from the utilization of the master budget include health and nutrition services, exceptional student services, highly qualified teachers, and teacher assessment. Well, as you all know, in order to have a master budget, we need to have money. Funding for the Arizona Department of Education, it's going to come through grants, federal government support, and tax revenue from legal Arizona residents. So give yourself a round of applause because you have all helped in funding the education for our state. Yay! Okay, the build of the master budget. There are 8 cost categories called object level categories. The first one is personnel services. That's employee-related salaries. The second is employee-related expenses. That includes insurance and retirement. Number 3 is in-state travel. Number 4, out-of-state travel. Number 5, overhead and supplies. That includes contractors. The reason why it does not fall under employee costs is because they do not carry a risk with ADE. They are a liquid asset. Number 6 is software, hardware, and licensing under $5,000. Number 7, software, hardware, and licensing over $5,000. The reason why there's a difference in those is that number 7, the one with the over $5,000, it needs to be authorized by a senior level administrator. So they put that in 2 different categories. Number 8 is indirect cost or operating transfers out. So for federal grants, they're interagency transfers of federal indirect or federal indirect charge expenses. So with every dollar spent, 13.8 cents is taken up for account processing, Department of Administration processing, and federal oversight. So pretty much all the indirect costs and transfers out. So if a grant is given, they don't actually get the full dollar amount of the grant. 13.8 cents of every single dollar of that grant will go into account processing, Department of Administration processing, and federal oversight. This is to make sure that the grant is stable and they make sure that the money is coming in correctly. And this is how they're able to pay each of those departments. The master budget is prepared annually as opposed to monthly because unlike a private company where they have an increase or decrease in revenue, ADE's funding has already been provided, and there is no fluctuation once the funding is given at the beginning of the fiscal year. It is generally prepared in the 4th quarter and correlates with the legislative session since that is where they receive their funding. Some of the reason for the education budget cuts would have to do with poor economic standing and mainly the recession. States' new budgets are providing less per pupil funding for kindergarten through 12th grade than they did 6 years ago. The reduced levels reflect the lingering effects of the 2007-2009 recession. Another reason why budget cuts have happened are the decreases in local tax revenues. While some funding has increased, such as the grants, it has generally not increased enough to make up for the cuts in past years.
Typically, pro formas are considered budgeted projects. However, the Department of Education refers to new projects as pro formas. These are upcoming projects that have little information to aid in determining the cost of the project. Many recurring budgets have projections that are rigid. They require a budgeted amount of money and cannot spend any more than the budgeted amount. For pro forma projects, more allowance for change is tolerated because it is expected that something will come up that could not have been predicted. For many entities, budgets are based on prior year performance mixed with future company expectations. A processing company, for example, will determine the amount of units they will sell in the future and base costs and expected revenue on prior year analysis. Government entities work very differently. Many budgets are based solely off of how much the department spent the prior year. They are given a budget to make sure they stay within. However, if the department doesn't spend all the money, then the following year their budget is reduced to the amount they did spend. The Department of Education is different still. Budget projections and allowances are based off of needs. This varies by student count, expected expenditures, etc. The reduction in spending of other government entities actually rolls over to the Department of Education. The less money spent by other departments, the more money that the Department of Education gets to spend. This is known as reverting funds. A grant is a sum of money given by an organization, especially government, for a particular purpose. Schools apply for grants for programs such as early childhood development. There is an approval process with applying for these grants. With this in mind, the Department of Education does not wait to see which grants will be approved. Rather, they assume that all grants will be approved. From here, they will use a need-based cost analysis to most effectively forecast spending requirements. Two major categories are observed when breaking down costs for the master budget: grants and schools. Grants are broken down based off work required. This includes questions such as how many developers or business analysts are required for the grant. Schools are broken down based off student counts. The school districts are required to give their head counts by the end of October. Dollar amounts are dispersed based off that. Once the money reaches the schools can use the money as seen fit and do not require the oversight of the department. This is known as local control. With funds constantly being cut, the department chooses to prioritize projects based off of associated risks. What don't they get if they don't do this? This creates the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few scenario. Budgets are firm. Projects are not allowed to overspend. The only exception is pro formas are assumed to have unforeseen costs. Ensuring that these projects do not overspend, set amounts of dollars are earmarked to different budget categories. Spending within these categories is tracked through purchase orders and encumbrances, which are restricted funds, inside an account that are to be used only for a specific liability. There's an approval process for any project over $30,000. This requires a project investment justification and, on approval, a monthly status report with updates on financial spending, project tracking, project deliveries, and project health. Due to increasing media coverage, it is not a secret that funding for Arizona education has been cut significantly in the last few years, due primarily to decreases in tax revenues and an overall economic standing. However, the Arizona Department of Education does everything it can to maximize every dollar's utility through the use of the master budget. The master budget is multifaceted, covering not only the funded school districts, but several programs meant to enrich students' lives and teachers' lives as well. The revenue for this budget consists of grants, federal support, and tax revenue. Unlike private business, the cash flow is not created in-house, which can lead to difficulties. The department has to restructure their master budget every year in the fourth quarter, creating and evaluating their projections for the coming year through strict budgets. The only exception would be new projects called pro formas, which are allowed some leniency, but must still keep the department informed of unforeseen purchases. This also correlates with a legislative session that determines the monetary support from the government. In spite of the budget cuts, the Arizona Department of Education still holds to its mission statement and works hard to create a fair and efficient budget.